Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am so grateful that so many of you here are joining us. We will continue to admit people as they come into the waiting room, but welcome to ADAC Answers Live, collaborative conversations for school leaders. I'm your host, Matt Maloney. I'm a former teacher and school leader for more than 15 years, and now I'm the vice president of marketing at ADAC. Teacher retention remains one of the most pressing challenges in education today. Schools are struggling to hire teachers. Teachers are leaving or considering leaving the profession at alarming rates. What can we as school leaders do to retain these good teachers? Over the next 30 minutes, we'll offer solutions and answer your questions with our national expert here, Denise Ball, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning with the Archdiocese of Washington Catholic Schools. For those who don't already know Denise, she is a veteran of the United States Army. She has 27 years of experience in the field of education. From Detroit to Baltimore and now DC, she has served as a teacher, principal, and associate superintendent. Dr. Ball earned her doctoral degree from Liberty University, and her research and dissertation is on this very topic of teacher retention. Denise, thanks so much for being with us. We're so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And hello, everybody. It's so good to see so many familiar faces and some new faces. This is a quick 30-minute discussion. It's an engaging discussion. So I've created 3 focus areas to kind of guide our conversation: building and maintaining a positive school culture, professional development and career pathways, and how do we use a wide lens to look at our competitive compensation. We have multiple governance models here with us today, ranging from public, private, and multiple faith-based school systems. Over 22 superintendents and a couple hundred school leaders have registered for this conversation. So I look forward to guiding us through it.
Thanks so much, Denise. Just a couple of housekeeping for everybody. If you could please note that we are recording this and we're going to be putting this up on our website, and we'll be sharing it for those who registered and might not be able to join live and whatnot. It's going to be up on our social media platforms, which is very exciting. Please use your chat feature. We want to hear from you. Questions, comments. We're going to do our best to get to everyone's questions during the session, but fear not, there will be a resource document with questions and answers that we'll send out post-session so that we get all of those questions answered. And let's start by, if everyone can throw into the chat, what state you're joining us from. We've had registrants from over 40 states. And so please share what state you're coming from so we can see what parts of the country are being represented. And so, Denise, let's dive in. In the blog post you did for us last week, you talked about school culture and school climate being so critical to teacher retention. Can you expound upon that and tell us a little bit more of how critical that is?
I sure will. And I have a couple questions that will help guide from our participants, from Peggy in Florida, Laura in Minnesota, and Marcia in Indiana. So over the last 13 years, there's been a plethora of research done on teacher retention, but a lot of the research has been correlated to salary. Ironically, I've spent the last 5 years diving into this topic, and the top 3 focus areas that are meaningful for teachers, public, private, the governance model doesn't matter, is leadership, team, and welcoming school climate. So I would just like to share, leaning in on Skalvik and Skalvik's research. Everything I share with you today is within the last 5 years, supported by research, and get the conversation going how we can help one another. The first focus area is school climate. And to answer the questions for Peggy, Lori, and Maria, the research shows that it's very important for us to help our new teachers crack the code. Meaning we might be intentional as school leaders because we're very busy, and I was a school leader for over 10 years, um, those new teachers coming in, we assign them to a mentor teacher and everyone gets busy. But the research shows that teachers within their first 3 to 5 years as new teachers are leaving the field because they haven't been able to crack the code. By that, I mean, if you see a teacher who's sitting alone in their classroom or they don't have a buddy, the research shows right from the teachers that they need that. We need to create the environment where everyone opts in, and there's not an opt out option. Building that school climate where the entire team takes on the approach of making sure that we are pausing to be available for one another. Um, Research also shows that in the last 5 years, what unfortunately has happened is the COVID-19 pandemic. Our teachers went through 20 months of feeling isolated, feeling stressed. And the research shows post COVID that as district leaders, as school leaders, we need to take the time. I'm encouraging it as well. I see it in my own research here within the Archdiocese of Washington to take the time to allow teachers to talk and break through. So this is a perfect time. Here we are in February as we're planning the end of the year activities is to find time at faculty or staff meetings to allow teachers to share feelings about what it meant to walk through the COVID-19 experience as we thread all of the good activity that our heroic teachers did during that pandemic. So, and that's really important because the research shows that teachers have not had time to close that chapter. So, raise your hand if now I oversee 90 schools for teaching and learning right now. Raise your hand if you are hearing that teachers are tired, they're burnt out, they won't take on another activity after school, right? Recently, I've been spending time talking to both principals and teachers on the whys. And I do believe that it has a lot to do with the fact that we have not taken the time to lean in on research and allow our teachers to pause, reflect on COVID, reflect on what they walked through, and then close the chapter. Close it. And then be intentional as district and school leaders. And this, when I say for our teachers, I also mean it's important to do that for our school leaders. Because just as much as we're hearing it from our teachers, that is the same thing I'm hearing from our leaders. They're tired. They too have done amazing feats in the last few years, and we need to allow them that space to share and to block out the noise of the world and to just walk through it. We acknowledge it, we close the chapter and move on. When we talk about our school climate, back in the day, well, I'll say age myself 10 years ago, with a team of 60, we might have been able to have a teacher who was doing what they were supposed to be doing or a school leader who was doing what they were supposed to be doing. And we didn't have to check in on them because they knew the mission. They were living the mission. Research is showing that no longer works. People want to be seen. And if that means greeting them as they walk in with a cup of coffee or tea or hot cider, and they need to be heard. So part of my encouragement today, I was so happy to be invited by ADAC for this important conversation, because if we can, everybody on this call who registered, if we can all come to the conclusion, at least one nugget of how we can lessen the stress and create an opportunity for the teachers and school team members that we serve, we will be making a lasting effect on 34,000 teachers and 370 students starting today, based on all of those who signed up for this conversation. The research does show that teachers are not feeling valued by society. And there's been some research by Lori Darling Hammond who correlates Maslow's hierarchy of needs for teachers and what does that mean for how they're feeling valued by society. So I encourage when we talk about building or maintaining or a school climate is that we have to model that in our word and action. And I think we're rusty. We're rusty as parents. We're rusty as district leaders, and we're rusty as school leaders sometimes because we're all tired and we all walk through the noise of and chaos of society that can come. And I think that we need to remind our parents just how valuable our school teachers are and encourage them to be a part of the conversation and making our teachers feel welcomed. Because the research does show if a teacher feels welcomed, not only by their leader, because that was the number one thread in a teacher deciding to stay in the classroom, but they feel welcomed by the team. So that camaraderie and morale is essential. Build that esprit de corps, and that they feel that their school climate, their parents, all of that is essential for teacher retention. And we'll even talk a little bit about what does that mean for recruitment when we have one of our participants who is building a new school. How exciting is that? But we have to find ways to share the good, create opportunities where not only our parents, our teachers, and our students, but changing that lens to see the good and share the good. And narratively across the nation, if we all do that, that's going to help us all for teacher retention, regardless of what governance model it is that we are choosing to serve in.
Denise, that's everything you said is so valuable, and the intentionality that school leaders need to really approach this with, that high level of intentionality to make their staff feel welcome, feel valued, and kind of to build that climate and culture. The next that another focus area, which I think goes overlooked sometimes, is that professional development and career pathways for teachers. I know when we were looking at this and preparing, that was one that stood out to me. I always think, oh yeah, school culture, compensation, which we're going to get to in a second. I know that's on everybody's mind, but professional development. Can you talk a little bit more about that and the role that plays in teacher retention?
Sure. And thank you, Matt. And I would say that everything that I'm sharing with you today, the three focus areas, they scaffold upon one another. And they're very synergistic. When you look at one, it bleeds over into the other area. When we're looking at professional development, that goes along with not only using our Title II funding, right? But part of what I want to encourage you is how do we build community, build that school climate, and lean in and lean on our vendor partners to leverage relationships to offset the budget. So when we do that, we're listening to our teachers, we're getting their input on professional development opportunities that they would like to see. But what I heard loud and clear from many of you sending in questions is that you just don't have the funding source. You don't have the revenue stream to pay for the PD. And, I would say the research that I've been reading recently to overcome those obstacles are school systems and school leaders who are leaning in on vendor relationships. For example, Chick-fil-A and Mission Barbecue Mission are two food vendors who readily support teachers. They nationally put that out there. Talking to your local food vendors of how they can support PD opportunities. I raise with my team on average $40,000 to $50,000 a year to support professional development by calling up our textbook vendors, by calling up our other vendors who support our schools in technology, integration, etc., and asking if they will either sponsor through funding or come and provide the professional development that our school leaders and teachers are requesting. So I wouldn't underestimate that. Another great idea that I'd heard in some of the conversations that I've been having the last 12 months was school systems relying on the local grocery store and the local boutiques, nail salons, hair salons, spas, and just going up and asking them, will they donate services in support of teachers. One, it's a write-off for the vendor to support your school. And two, you're not affecting your line item on your budget. But amazing if you could have your local communities supporting your teachers through your advocacy at the district level or at the school level. And then you promise the vendor. I always tell our vendors, I will give you my word that we will share it on every social media that we have. And I have had these vendors come back and say they cannot afford the type of marketing that we give them for donating to our schools. So it's a win-win for them to write off. So I do encourage you to really rely on the Houghton Mifflins of the world, the NWAs, the Curriculum Associates, the Archangel Education and Technology. The list goes on and on and on. So really leaning in on that. It's important. Research does show it's important that when we're talking about professional development that we take in the voice of the teachers. And part of what I found was very interesting in my conversations and my doctoral interviews was that teachers want to know ahead of time what kind of professional development is going to be implemented for the year, not just month by month, not by quarter, but for the year. And I thought that that was really interesting because, and some of the feedback when I was asking the why was because it takes the stress off them. They can plan. And as you know, people in education want to know. So if teachers know in advance what the professional development plan is for the 25-26 school year, they can then begin to do some of their own research so that will make as reflective practitioners, that will make their engagement in your professional development opportunities for the 25-26 school year better and more impactful, not only for them as teachers, but also for the students placed in their care. Do we have any questions yet on this? I see everybody writing, and you're going to get this all from us.
Yep. Please don't forget, put your questions, your comments, please into the chat. We want to hear from you. Denise, those were so many concrete, um, great ideas for people to implement. We really want to be here for you all for concrete, actionable steps, not just theory, but we want to get into practice. Denise, let's talk a little bit about compensation because I know that was a major question that came through in our registration, whether it was a leader saying that, I wish I could pay more. What are some other creative ways I can create monetary compensation? Um, or simply like, how do I differentiate myself when I know, for instance, the the adjacent district pays more, or when I'm in a private school that doesn't have the same level of salary and benefits than my public school counterpart. So
Sure.
please, can you share a little bit about some ideas there?
Sure. I would say this. As I mentioned, it's all very synergistic. And when we're talking about professional development, it also goes hand in hand with compensation package. Because if you can have, as a district or a school leader, an outline of what kind of professional development plan you have, leadership academy, mentor program, um, what the development courses that you offer or support towards certification and licensure, all of those things help and it becomes a part of why research shows that teachers choose to stay. So I'm going to call out a little people: Linda, Rachel, Christine, Gary, Angie, and Mike, superintendent from Tallahassee. Welcome. Your questions were very helpful on what you wanted to know about compensation. So I'm going to ask you to kind of keep in mind the school climate, because that outside of leadership, school climate and team are going to be the number main factors of why a teacher chooses to stay or why they feel um, called to be in your school system. So a couple of things. The National Center for Education Statistics, the latest data I could find was 2021. Private schools 82% teachers retention, 6% moved to other schools, and 12% left the profession. In public schools, 84% stayed in the classroom in 2021, 8 moved on, and 8% left the profession. The NCAA data brief for 23-24 shows that 81% of principals stayed in their schools and 88% of teachers stayed in their schools. Now, when we're talking about the average salary rose for public schools in 22-23 by 3.9% to new teachers coming in with a starting salary of $44,530. Okay, so when you're looking, for those of you who asked me these questions on the comparison, I'm going to get to the nuts and bolts of some of what the research says on that, but that's the average salary coming in. With our public schools, given a cost of living adjustment of 2 to 5% annually on average for the COLA. Our private schools, 1 to 3% COLA annually. When we're talking about how can we compete with salaries, what I'm going to say to you is the research says salaries don't matter. And I know we hear from our teachers that they want more money, and we want to give them more money. But I'm going to encourage you to take a look at how we can get creative with non-monetary benefits, because as school governance systems, we're never going to be apples to apples. We just will never get there. But what we can do is we can make sure that our school climate is sound and engaging. We offer PD opportunities. But then here are some creative ways in which some school systems across the nation are utilizing as a compensation non-monetary benefit. They're using childcare discounts. There's multiple schools, public and private, and faith-based schools who've created a classroom for their employee childcare. And for them, when I talked to one school leader, it was beneficial to take that and create that environment for teacher retention. And to quote the principal, she said she would do it over and over and over again, just for the outstanding benefits of the increase of morale, the feeling. When we're talking about, one of our questions was, how do you get teachers to stay after the 9 to 4 or 9 to 3 workday? Well, that sure does get buy-in, right? Or creating that service to other school culture, because from the top down, we're showing we care. Another creative idea in the research is flexible scheduling. Now you say, what is that? Well, looking at the schedule, which as a school leader, I always used to have a team approach to that, because that is sure a wonderful opportunity to raise the hair, right? But once school system uses their auxiliary or specials teachers and looking at that schedule and creates a raffle lottery system to pull out when teachers get to leave an hour early. And it's where their school schedule, that teacher schedule, happens to fall with a special in the afternoon. Now, I thought that was very clever. And from a scheduling standpoint, if you're able to look at that flexible scheduling, we have a local high school here who does something very similar, but in the morning, allowing teachers to have a lottery system to come in an hour later through a raffle. That builds esprit de corps and morale, and it's cost nothing. And when we're doing it equitably, making sure that everyone gets an opportunity to benefit from that, that's really meaningful for your team. I see that we have some questions coming in, Matt.
Yep. So, a couple of questions with reaching out to local vendors and whatnot. The question came from Peggy, and Peggy wanted to know who have you seen do the legwork on this, because that is time consuming.
Sure.
So has that been parent volunteers going after it, the school leader, the school's receptionist, all of the above?
Yeah. That's a great question, Peggy. I will tell you for at the district level, a lot of that work is done by me. So, and what I do is I just send out an email, and really it only takes a couple social media posts, to be honest. If you look at my LinkedIn post or uh, um, Lindsay, who's my director for educational programs, she runs the vendor partnering with me. You'll see that we'll shout out to the vendors. And then before we know it, the vendors are reaching out to us. How can we support your schools? Because it creates an environment of sharing the good. So I would say when we're talking about vendor partnerships, I would do a multi pronged outreach. I would send in your weekly e-news or what kind of electronic tool you share with your parents, a Google form or some way for vendors and our parents who already own companies, how they want to support the school. And you create either a donate button or you create sponsorships. You can sponsor this class's field trip for 5,000 a year and get a nice little plastic sign that says the Ball family sponsored all the field trips for grade 5. The parents love it, vendors love it. So that's one way through your local e-news. And you say, if please share with all the companies that you frequent in the community. We're looking for vendor sponsors. Now, of course, I would say I'd be remiss if I didn't say, regardless of what governance model, make sure that the vendor is in alignment with your mission and vision. So you do want to make sure that that is a good pairing. But in regards to all of our curriculum companies and Archangel and Cisco and Fax and TADS, all of those companies, I know that we have Catapult who registered to be with us today. Um, our university partners, Marymount is with us, and the Roche Center from Boston College. I would say lean on them and see how you can partner, have the conversation. You're collecting feedback from your teachers of what they need. And so it's a multi-pronged approach. You're pushing it out on social media and you're sending Peggy an email. And you're just saying, please check. I always say, please check us out on social media, see the good happening in our schools. We'd love to have you partner with us. Um, and we're looking, and I always give a specific deadline because we are living in a very busy world. So anytime I'm dealing with our vendor partners, I will say, I am looking for sponsorship for spring. I need to know by, if it's spring, I need to know by February 1. So I would reach out to your community partners and ask for deadlines with a promise of what are you going to do to support that sponsorship. We're going to, encourage dinners at your restaurant, your spa, we'll do a shout out, whatever it may be.
Excellent. Thank you, Denise. Before we get to Kenneth's question and a few more, I just want to remind everyone this is ADAC Answers Live. And our next session is going to be in 2 weeks on February 19th. We are going to discuss maximizing PD effectiveness with Dr. Julie Cantillon. And we designed this as a collaborative discussion because that's what we're all about here at ADAC. We want to listen to you and be responsive to you and all of our school leaders and the schools that we work with. If you're not familiar with ADAC, our mission is to empower pre-K through 12 educators to meet the learning needs of all students. We do this by customizing professional development and coaching services. You can see our website is on our background here, theadac.com. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. We love working with schools and empowering you and continuing to build. And as Denise said, sharing the good. So Kenneth put in, how do we continue to increase morale when now his example was some of those financial perks
Sure.
are getting taken away by what I assume is someone above his pay grade.
Sure.
So whether that's tuition benefits or other benefits that HR district is making the decision, how do we maintain that morale with our teachers when it feels like things are being taken away?
Sure. I think that's a real concern. Thank you, Ken, for that question. Um, and I think that it's important to be honest. when you look at the research done over the last 5 years, teachers really don't feel like that their leadership district have really been had an open door or had enough time to have the conversation. So I would say the best thing to do is to be honest and create an environment that's not sterile. So if you're about to have an honest conversation and you're thinking about having it at the local faculty meeting, I would get creative and pull chairs outside and get in a circle, or, create an environment that is open and conducive, that's not the norm, the structured norm where we're sometimes just giving information, but create an environment where automatically, physically, that teachers know that you're going to have a conversation. And I would just say, here's where we're at. Unfortunately, there's going to be cuts, but let's talk about what we can do and because each and every one of your schools and your school districts are amazing. You're amazing because you've chosen to serve there. It's important to take the time to enter the challenging conversation honestly and talk and listen, and then share, have your teachers, have your leaders share what's their why. Why are they choosing to stay? Because the research shows when teachers are in a group, and sometimes we get afraid as leaders to open up that forum, right? Because we're afraid it's going to go negative. And it certainly might at first, but we have to be committed enough as a team to enter that conflict and then guide the conversation, listen, and then say, okay, wow, that was really good feedback. But then what can we do? I can't do that, but I can tell you we're going to do potluck Mondays and everyone's going to contribute. Well, now, so what you're doing then is taking that narrative that's going to be negative and you're creating a positive school culture that is really where you want to go anyway, regardless if it's public or private. What we need to do is all of us focus on the good because the narrative in society is not positive for our teachers. So we want to just be the voice of making sure that they feel heard and appreciated and valued. So Ken, that's what I would do. I would flip the narrative. I'd listen, create the environment to listen, and then flip the narrative and ask them, what are some good things here? What's your why? Because you have to remind them of that.
Thank you so much, Denise. Denise, as we conclude here, what are, 2 or 3 things that you wanna share with these school leaders as some final takeaways? I know when I'm walking away from here, I'm thinking I'm thinking intentionality
Mhm.
and being a support to my teachers, making sure that they know that they're heard, that they're valued, and then being really thoughtful and intentional about decision making, whether that's bringing them in to be part of the decision making process when it's appropriate, and empowering them in that way, and then that goes further than most things when it comes to creating job satisfaction and retention. That that's what I've heard over it. Um, what else are those major takeaways that you want to ensure that everybody walks away with today?
I think, Matt, you hit on it. I think we're at a really great time to have the conversation with our school teams and our school leaders across the district right now. Um, Talking about the national report card and putting it in perspective. We all know it, public, private, what does it mean? But then saying thank you to your teachers. And as you say thank you for choosing to be here, whatever school system you're in, then give me your feedback on what kind of professional development would you like to see? And then creating that professional development plan through their voice. And then talk about what is the theme for next year. All this is a really good time because every month from now until June, when they leave your campus, they should be you have a wonderful opportunity, and I encourage you to have the conversation of highlighting the good, pausing to have the difficult conversation if the budget's being cut. Talk about some of the good that is still happening, but being honest, and then move forward, and then share the good. Share it in word, share it by greeting your people in the hallways, or if you're a district leader, getting out in your schools. Um, and then sharing it on social media, because good begets good. Public, private, faith-based schools. The one thread that I found through all the research over the last 5 years on teacher retention was joy. That is not germane to one governance model. Joy is synergistic for teachers choosing to stay in their classroom.
Denise, thank you so much. Your energy comes right through the screen. We're so grateful for the time you gave us today, and thank you to all of our school leaders who joined us. We call you school leaders. I know some places will say, "Oh, school administrators." You all are beyond administrators. Okay, you are leaders, and all the things that we talked about is taking on that leadership role, making sure you're setting the tone. You do amazing work each and every day. Thank you for your service to education in our nation and for everything you do for the youth of our nation. We're so grateful. Remember, you can join us in 2 weeks for our next session, and I'm about to put up a closing slide. If you did register, we already have your email, and we're going to send you a resource document that answers the questions you submitted, even the ones that we didn't get to during this session. But if you joined us without registering, there's going to be a QR code. Please go ahead and scan that, fill that out, so we have your info, and we'll get you those resources. Again, from all of us at ADAC, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks at our next session. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
One in 5 children in the United States have learning differences, making it more challenging than ever to be a teacher or school leader. At ADAC, we empower K-12 educators to meet the learning needs of all students through customized professional development and coaching services. Learn more at www.theadac.com. That's THEADAC.com.